My name is Adam Foster. 12 years of marriage, 2 beautiful kids, and a home built on what I thought was love. But 7 months ago, everything shattered. I found out my wife was cheating, and I never confronted her. Not at first. I watched, in silence, as the woman I loved unraveled everything we had. You'd think I'd explode with rage, but no. I let the silence do the damage. Until one moment changed everything. A familiar face from my past, and a decision that turned my pain into power. This isn't just a story of betrayal, it's how I finally set myself free. And if you had told me a year ago that the woman I built my life with, the mother of my children, my partner of 12 years, would betray me in the most devastating way imaginable, I would have laughed in your face. Not Claire. Not my Claire. But that's the thing about betrayal. It never comes from an enemy. It comes from the one who says, I love you. I found out about Claire's affair 7 months ago. No dramatic discovery. No hotel receipts or lipstick on collars. Just small shifts. Little things. Her smile felt distant. She started guarding her phone like it held state secrets. She laughed at messages I didn't see, dressed like she was going to a gala just to grab coffee with a friend, and started working late. A lot. I noticed. Of course, I noticed. You can't live with someone that long and not feel it when they start disappearing before your eyes. So, I did what any wounded man in denial does. I hoped I was wrong. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was stress. Maybe she was going through something. I told myself not to snoop. I told myself I trusted her. But then, one night while she was asleep, her phone lit up. The preview showed a message. Can't stop thinking about last night. You're incredible. My heart stopped. I knew that name. I knew that number. It wasn't a colleague. It wasn't a friend. It was betrayal, glowing right there on the screen. I didn't wake her. I didn't scream. I didn't even cry. I just sat there in the dark, with my entire world crashing down around me in silence. That night, something inside me broke, and I never told her I saw it. In the days that followed, I spiraled. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I went to work, came home, went through the motions, and died a little more inside every time I looked at her. I'd stand in the shower, the water scorching hot, hoping the pain would wash off my skin. But it didn't. It clung to me. It poisoned everything. Claire, she must have known I knew. I wasn't exactly subtle. I stopped talking to her. I answered her questions with one-word responses. Yes, no, maybe, I don't know. I avoided the house when she was home. I left divorce lawyer brochures on the kitchen counter like forgotten junk mail. She never asked. Not once. And that silence cut deeper than any argument could have. Even our kids noticed. I'll never forget the way my son, Ryan, tugged on my sleeve one night and whispered, Dad, are you and Mom getting a divorce? He looked scared, like he already knew the answer. I knelt beside him, pulled him into a hug, and gave the hardest speech I've ever had to deliver. We both love you. It's not your fault. Sometimes, grown-ups just can't stay together. Claire was in the room. She heard every word. She didn't say a thing. Her silence, again, was all the confirmation I needed. That was the moment I emotionally divorced her. The legal papers hadn't been signed yet, but in my mind, it was over. I didn't care anymore. Not about salvaging anything. Not about getting answers. I was done trying to understand why. The betrayal was enough. But then, life threw me a curveball. It happened on a random Tuesday, while I was grabbing coffee before work. That's when I saw her Monica Fields. A name from another life. A woman I hadn't seen in over 15 years. Back in college, Monica and I had this strange, electric connection. We'd flirted, danced around each other, but nothing ever happened. Timing was never right. But that morning, when our eyes met across that cafe, it was like the years had melted away. She smiled, I smiled back, and before I knew it, we were sitting at a table, catching up like no time had passed. The chemistry? Still there. Stronger than ever. She asked me if I was single. I told her I was married, but not really. Explained the situation with Claire, told her I wasn't ready to date yet. Monica respected that. She handed me her number and said, call me when you're ready. I've waited this long. For the first time in 7 months, I felt alive. I walked out of that cafe with something I hadn't felt in ages, clarity, hope, a reason to pull the trigger on what I had been avoiding for far too long. That night, I came home early. Claire was in the living room, scrolling her phone. I sat across from her, and for the first time in months, I looked her in the eyes. We need to talk, I said, my voice calm. She glanced up, puzzled. I know about the affair. I've known for months. And I'm done pretending. I want a divorce. Her eyes widened, but not with guilt, with fear. But I wasn't finished. I've checked out of this marriage, Claire. I've been gone for months. You had your chance to come clean. You didn't. So now, I'm taking my life back. What happened next, I wasn't prepared for. She didn't lash out. She didn't deny it. She fell apart. But that's a story for another day. Claire didn't say a word for several seconds. She just stared at me, her mouth slightly open, like her brain couldn't catch up with what she'd just heard. Then, as if someone had flipped a switch inside her, she started shaking her head, slow at first, then faster. No, Adam. Please, don't say that, she whispered, voice trembling. I remained seated, hands resting calmly on my knees, the weight of the past 7 months pressing down on my shoulders. She stood up and took a step toward me, then faltered like her legs had forgotten how to carry her. She collapsed onto the floor, hands pressed against her mouth, her whole body racked with sobs. I had never seen Claire like this. Not at our worst fights, not when her father died, not even during the high-risk pregnancy with our daughter. This wasn't crying, this was unraveling. She crawled over to me on her knees, clutching the fabric of my jeans like she was drowning, and I was the only thing keeping her above water. I messed up. I know I did. I was stupid. So stupid, she choked out. But we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can. Claire, I cut in softly but firmly, stop. She blinked up at me through tear-swollen eyes. You think we can patch this up? Like it's a leaky faucet or a broken light switch. I shook my head. You tore this family apart 7 months ago. I gave you every opportunity to come clean, to speak up, to fight for us. But you didn't. You just kept lying and sneaking around while I slowly drowned in silence. I didn't think you knew, she cried, gripping her hair. I thought if I just ended it, it would go away. That it wouldn't matter. Wouldn't matter? I repeated, my voice sharpening. Claire, you shattered the man who trusted you with his soul. You broke our home. And for what? Some temporary thrill with a man who clearly means more to you than your husband and children. No, she shouted. He didn't mean more. It wasn't about that. I don't even know why I did it. I was just lost. I felt invisible. And whose fault was that? I asked. Did you ever think to talk to me? Did you ever once stop to consider the nuclear fallout you were about to cause? She didn't answer. She just cried harder, curled up into herself like a child, gasping through her sobs. I sat back and watched, feeling nothing. Not hate. Not pity. Just emptiness. The part of me that used to ache for her had been hollowed out, replaced by a calm numbness. Do you love him? I asked. Her head snapped up. No. God, no. It wasn't love. It wasn't anything. It was a mistake, a terrible, awful mistake. Please don't throw everything away over this. I let out a slow breath and stood up. She grabbed at my hand, but I gently pulled it away. I'm not throwing anything away, I said. You did that when you chose to cheat. When you decided your secret pleasure was worth more than our vows, our kids, our life. I was scared, she whimpered. Scared of what we'd become, of how things felt so routine. So your answer was to burn it all down? I said coldly. Claire, I would have done anything for you. Anything. I worshipped you. I carried the weight of this family on my back while you were out. What? Playing house with another man? She tried to speak, but her voice failed. I didn't wait for her to recover. I'm moving forward with the divorce. It's already started. The papers will be served soon, I said. I'm not interested in couples therapy. I'm not interested in second chances. I'm interested in peace for me, and especially for the kids. Claire looked like she'd been hit by a truck. She pressed her hand to her chest, like she couldn't breathe. What about them? She gasped. What about Ryan and Lily? Don't they deserve a whole family? They deserve parents who aren't lying to each other, I said. They deserve stability. And right now, that means separation. You can't undo this, Claire. You can't cry it away. You made your choice. And now we both have to live with it. She was sobbing so hard now that her words were incomprehensible. I had never seen someone fall apart so completely, and it should have hurt, but it didn't. Not the way it should have. Watching her there, collapsed on the floor in her own regret, I realized the love I had for her was already dead. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to scream or throw things or demand explanations. The silence I'd lived in for months had already buried the marriage. Now I was just putting the final nail in the coffin. I walked out of the room and into the hallway. Her cries followed me, echoing through the walls of the house we built together. But I didn't stop. I didn't look back. In that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. I didn't sleep that night. Even after I left Claire sobbing on the living room floor, even after I shut the bedroom door behind me and turned off the lights, the sound of her broken voice still echoed in my ears. The walls of our house felt thinner than ever, and every sniffle, every whispered please, seeped through the cracks like a haunting. It was like living with a ghost that refused to move on. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wide-eyed and numb. I thought about everything. Our wedding day, the birth of our children, late-night movie marathons, whispered dreams in the dark. It was strange how betrayal could rewind your memories and poison them. Things that once made me smile now felt like cruel reminders of what I'd lost, or maybe what I'd never really had. Around 3 a.m, the hallway light flicked on. I could hear her pacing, barefoot, slow steps, back and forth in front of the bedroom door. She never knocked, but I could feel her presence, like gravity had shifted toward that spot. I didn't get up. I didn't say anything. I just waited for her to give up and go to bed. She didn't. Instead, she waited until sunrise. At around 6, I finally stepped out. Her eyes were bloodshot, her face puffy and pale, and she looked smaller, like someone had drained the life out of her. She didn't speak, just followed me like a shadow as I walked into the kitchen and made coffee. When I sat at the table, she stood there gripping the back of a chair, trembling. "Please," she finally whispered. "Adam, please don't hate me." I sipped my coffee and stared out the window. The sky was pale gray. "Fitting. I don't hate you," I said flatly. "But I don't love you either. Not anymore." She collapsed into the chair across from me like I'd struck her. "But you used to," she said, tears instantly welling up again. "You used to look at me like I was your whole world. I still remember the way you smiled when I walked down the aisle." "I did," I said. "You were my whole world. And maybe that was my mistake." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I gave you everything," I said. "Time, love, trust, loyalty. I worked 60-hour weeks so you could stay home with the kids. I skipped guys' trips, career opportunities, everything, because you were home. And I wanted that. I was proud of it." "Then why are you giving up on us?" she whispered. "Because you gave up first." That shut her up. For once, she didn't have a response. Just a deep, gut-wrenching silence. She reached across the table and took my hand before I could pull it away. "I was lonely," she said. "Not because of you, because of me. I felt like I wasn't needed anymore. Like I was fading into the background of my own life. And then this guy, he noticed me, complimented me, made me feel desirable again. It was never about love. It was stupid. It was weakness." "So you blew up our marriage because you needed a compliment?" I asked. "No. She shook her head violently. "I didn't plan it. I didn't think it through. I convinced myself it was just a phase, that I could stop anytime. I told myself I'd end it before it got serious, before you found out. But I didn't. I let it go too far." "You let it go too far?" I said, my voice rising for the first time. "Claire, you made 1,000 choices, texts, meetings, lies, bedsheets, and now you want to reduce it all to a single mistake." "I know," she said quickly. "I know what I did. I hate myself for it." I pulled my hand away. "No," I said quietly. "You hate the consequences. That's not the same thing." She slumped back in her chair, covering her face with her hands. "What do I have to do, Adam? Tell me. I'll do anything. Therapy, honesty, a post-nup. I'll let you track me. You can have full access to my phone, my email. I'll never talk to another man again if that's what it takes. Just please, don't leave me." I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt exhausted. Not from anger, from everything. The promises, the tears, the pleas. None of it mattered anymore. Not to me. "This isn't about control, Claire," I said. "I don't want to be your jailer. I don't want to keep score for the rest of our lives. I just want peace. I want dignity. And I want out." She leaned forward again, desperation carved into every line of her face. "There has to be something left in you for me. Something you haven't buried yet." I stared at her for a long moment. The woman I once adored was gone. What sat across from me was a stranger, begging me to resurrect a love she'd personally killed. "I used to have a million reasons to love you," I said. "Now I have one reason to walk away. You destroyed them all." She broke again, just shattered. Sobs that rattled the walls. I stood up, grabbed my coat, and walked to the door. She followed, calling after me, but I didn't turn around. Her screams echoed through the hallway. That was the moment I knew there was no coming back. Not for her, not for us. And for the first time in a long time, I stepped outside and breathed real air. Cold, sharp, cleansing. The cold air hit me like a punch in the lungs as I stepped outside. It wasn't even that cold, not by season standards, but after hours in a house full of tears and lies, the world outside felt sharp, honest, even. I stood on the porch, staring into the early morning haze, my breath forming clouds that disappeared faster than my marriage had. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay there. Not with her sobbing behind the front door, not with the smell of stale heartbreak hanging in every room. I got in the car and drove with no destination. The roads were empty. Just me, the steering wheel, and a future I hadn't started building yet. About 10 miles out, I pulled into an old parking lot near the lake. It was a place I hadn't visited in years. Claire and I used to take the kids there when they were younger, back when laughter came easily, and the world hadn't yet fractured. I parked facing the water and just sat there, gripping the wheel, trying to make sense of how things had gone so wrong. That's when I realized something. I couldn't move forward until I faced everything head on. The betrayal, the silence, the doubt that had taken root in my mind. I wasn't just angry at Claire anymore. I was angry at myself. For ignoring the signs. For pretending everything was fine. For letting it go on so long that it broke something in me. I pulled out my phone and started making a list. Not of chores or tasks, but of truths. Brutal, unfiltered, ugly truths I needed to confront. 1. I no longer trust Claire. 2. I no longer love Claire. 3. The kids come first, always. 4. I need closure, not reconciliation. 5. I need to know if they're truly mine. That last one hit harder than I expected. It made my stomach twist with guilt. I hated even thinking it, but after 7 months of watching Claire live a double life, I couldn't ignore the possibility anymore. What if the betrayal went deeper than I imagined? What if the children I'd raised with every fiber of my soul weren't biologically mine? I drove to the clinic that afternoon and booked 2 tests, a full-panel STI screening and a paternity test. It felt like betrayal on top of betrayal, but I needed to know, for their sake and mine. If there was any doubt, I had to face it now, not years down the road when it would hurt them even more. When I got home, Claire was in the bedroom, curled into a ball. I didn't speak to her. I just walked past and locked myself in the study. That night, I didn't sleep again. I sat in front of a wall I'd covered with papers. Each page had a title. The kids. Claire. Monica. The divorce. Me. Under each heading, I wrote what I wanted, what I feared, what I refused to tolerate. I poured everything out, pages of hurt, goals, possibilities. I wasn't just planning a separation. I was mapping the architecture of a new life. One I had to build from scorched earth. Claire knocked once on the door that night. Just once. She didn't come in. She didn't say a word. I heard her walk away. The next morning, I sat down with the kids. Claire stayed in the kitchen, silent, eyes puffy. I gently explained to Ryan and Lily what was happening, again. They were too young to understand the full scope, but smart enough to sense it wasn't just a bad week. We're not going to live in the same house all the time anymore, I told them, trying to keep my voice from shaking. But we're still your parents. We still love you. That will never change. Ryan asked if I was mad at Mom. I paused. I'm sad, I answered truthfully. But I'm trying to do what's best for everyone. Sometimes love means letting go, even when it hurts. Claire wept quietly at the sink. She didn't interrupt. Later that day, I called Monica. I didn't expect her to answer. I wouldn't have blamed her if she didn't. But she did. Hey, she said gently. Rough week. You could say that. I replied with a dry laugh. I'm not calling to start anything. I just needed someone who doesn't look at me like I broke something. We talked for an hour. She told me she understood. That she'd be there if I needed to talk again, but wouldn't press. That she respected what I was trying to do. That phone call reminded me of something I hadn't felt in months. Clarity. Claire had shattered my trust, my sense of home, my peace of mind. But I wasn't going to let her destroy my integrity. I was going to finish this divorce on my terms. With grace. With fairness. For the kids. For myself. Because no matter how much she begged, no matter how loud the guilt screamed in the back of my head, I knew deep down, I couldn't heal in the same place I was broken. In the days that followed, Claire turned into a ghost haunting her own house. She wandered from room to room, barely speaking, barely eating. She'd sit in the kids' rooms after they went to school, clinging to old toys or staring at photos like they were evidence from a life she no longer had access to. I didn't say much either. Not because I was trying to punish her, but because I had nothing left to give. Every conversation felt like we were digging through emotional wreckage, and I was done trying to salvage pieces from a collapsed foundation. One night, around 11 p.m., I sat alone on the back porch. The house behind me was silent, save for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of old wood. The sky above was clear, stars scattered across it like tiny shards of truth. That's when my phone buzzed. Monica. I stared at her name for a long moment. Just seeing it stirred something inside me I hadn't felt in months, something warm, something alive. I answered on the third ring. Hi, I said. You sound tired, she said gently. I am. You want to talk about it? I paused, then nodded, even though she couldn't see me. And so we talked. For over an hour, I sat under the stars, spilling pieces of my broken life to someone who wasn't judging, who wasn't trying to fix it, who was just there, present. Monica listened with patience, with silence when it was needed, and with empathy that didn't feel forced. When I told her I was waiting for the divorce to be finalized before starting anything, she didn't push. She just said, I respect that, Adam. I really do. She told me about her own past. How she was engaged once, 5 years ago. How her fiancé died in a work accident just a few months before their wedding. She said the grief swallowed her whole, and she hadn't truly connected with anyone since. Life's messy, she said. But sometimes, in the middle of that mess, something honest shows up. Something real. And if we're lucky, we're brave enough to reach for it. I didn't say anything at first. My throat tightened at her words. Maybe, I finally said. But right now, I'm still crawling out of the rubble. Then crawl, she said. I'll be here. It wasn't a romantic declaration. It wasn't a promise. It was something more important than that. It was respect. We ended the call with no pressure. Just understanding. The next morning, Claire must have noticed something was different. She came to me in the kitchen, eyes still puffy, wearing a sweater that hung off her like it didn't belong to her anymore. You talked to her, didn't you? She asked. I didn't deny it. I did. Are you with her now? No. I told you. I won't start anything until after the divorce is final. She looked down at the floor. Is she why you won't give me another chance? I took a breath. No. You're why. What you did. What it broke. Monica's not the reason this is over. She's just the reminder that I deserve something better. Claire's shoulders slumped. She nodded, slowly. That's fair. She left the room after that. No crying, no begging. Just a quiet acceptance that the last threads holding us together had finally snapped. That night, I added another heading to my wall of notes. Monica. Underneath, I didn't write expectations or fantasies. I just wrote one line. When I'm ready, I'll call her again. Not before. It was the first decision I made since this all began that felt entirely mine. Later that week, I met with my attorney again. We went over the terms of the divorce. I told him I wanted to keep it clean. No mudslinging. No power plays. Just a 50-50 split and joint custody. He looked surprised. She cheated on you, Adam. You have evidence. You don't have to be this generous. I know, I said. But I want to be able to look my kids in the eye 10 years from now and say, I didn't destroy their mother out of spite. Because as much as I resented Claire, maybe even hated her in some dark corner of my heart, I still loved the children we'd made together. And I refused to let bitterness define the version of me they'd remember. I was finally learning to let go of the rage, the hurt, the need for vindication. I wasn't giving Claire a pass, far from it. But I was choosing not to be like her. I was choosing to walk away with my dignity intact. And somewhere, on the other end of that road, Monica waited, not as a reward, not as a rebound, but as a possibility. For now, that was enough. Saturday came like a thunderstorm I'd been watching approach all week. Slow, heavy, inevitable. Claire's sister, Danielle, had called the night before to warn me. She's not doing well, Adam, she said, her voice hushed. She hasn't slept, barely eats, cries constantly. I've never seen her like this. I didn't respond. What was there to say? Claire had made her bed. She just never imagined she'd have to lie in it alone. Still, I agreed to meet her. Not to comfort her, not to give her hope, but because I needed closure, and because part of me wanted her to hear, not just feel, the finality of this. When I arrived at Danielle's place, Claire was already there, sitting on the couch like a broken marionette. Her face was unrecognizable. Her skin was pale, her eyes bloodshot and hollow, hair messy like she hadn't cared for days. She looked smaller, sunken, like her guilt had physically shrunk her. I stayed standing. She looked up and tried to speak, but couldn't. Her voice cracked, and she covered her mouth as if trying to hold in whatever was clawing its way out of her. "Take your time," I said. "Say what you need to." She shook her head violently, then finally forced out a whisper. "I'm so sorry, Adam, for everything." The words came like a dam breaking. Within seconds, she was sobbing again, loud, heavy, body-racking sobs. But this time, I didn't feel cold. I didn't feel angry either. I felt detached, like I was watching a movie. A sad one, sure, but still just a story that wasn't mine anymore. Claire tried to explain. In between the crying, she confessed it all. Her affair wasn't planned. It began with a flirtatious joke at the office, which turned into long lunches, secret chats, then stolen moments in cheap hotels. She swore it wasn't love, just attention, just the feeling of being wanted again. "I thought it would pass," she said, tears dripping off her chin. "I told myself we'd get through it, and you'd never have to know. I didn't think anyone would get hurt." I stared at her, stunned at how delusional she sounded. "You didn't think cheating on your husband and lying to your family would hurt anyone?" I asked, voice calm but cold. "You had an affair for months, Claire. That's not a mistake. That's a campaign of betrayal." "I know," she said. "I know. I was selfish. I had this fantasy that I could step out of my life, indulge in something reckless, and then come back to it like nothing happened. I was stupid." She wiped her face and handed me her phone. "I blocked him a month and a half ago," she said. "It's over. I promise." I unlocked the screen. Within seconds, notifications started pouring in, dozens of unread messages from her affair partner. Some recent, some begging for another meeting. She hadn't replied. She really had cut him off. But that didn't matter now. Too little, too late. "You didn't break it off because you felt guilty," I said. "You broke it off because you felt me slipping away." She didn't deny it. "I thought I could fix it," she whispered. "I didn't know you'd already left me emotionally." I sat down across from her, steady and clear. "You didn't know because you never asked. Because you didn't care. Not until you were about to lose the safety net you took for granted." Danielle, sitting silently to the side, looked like she wanted to vanish. Then Claire said something that made her sister go stiff. "I started thinking about cheating after what happened to you," she said to Danielle, who turned sharply. "What? You told me what it was like, the thrill, the attention," Claire said, sobbing again. "You made it sound like you were alive again." Danielle's face flushed red. She looked at me, horrified. "I never meant for her to take that as encouragement," she said quickly. "My cheating destroyed my relationship, too. I warned her what it would cost." Claire nodded, covering her face in shame. "But I didn't listen," she said. "I got caught up in the fantasy and forgot what was real. I thought you'd never find out, Adam. I thought I could hide it forever." I leaned forward, folding my hands. "I need you to understand something," I said. "This isn't just about the affair. It's about everything you destroyed along with it. My trust, our bond, the safety our kids felt in our home. You burned it all down for a thrill. And now you're standing in the ashes asking if I still see the same house." She reached out again, barely able to speak. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she whispered. "But please, don't take the kids from me. Don't make them hate me." My heart twisted, but not for her. For our children, caught in the crossfire of her selfishness. "They'll know the truth," I said. "But I won't poison them. I'll never speak badly about you to them. I'll let your actions speak for themselves." She broke down again, and I stood up. "I've said what I needed to. I'm filing the papers next week. Please respect that." As I turned to leave, she grabbed my hand, desperate, shaking. "I'll never stop loving you," she said. "Even if you hate me forever." I looked her in the eyes, those same eyes I once adored, and felt nothing but a quiet sadness. "I don't hate you, Claire," I said. "But I also don't love you anymore. And that's the difference." Then I walked out the door, into the fading afternoon light, feeling something that almost resembled peace. I drove straight home after that final conversation with Claire and her sister. The sun was setting, bleeding gold and red across the sky like the closing curtain of a tragedy. But instead of feeling peace, I felt an eerie numbness. Like I'd walked out of a battlefield, not victorious, just alive. The house was empty when I stepped inside. The silence was thick. Heavy. I walked past the family photos on the wall, each one a frozen lie, and went straight to my study. I pulled out the folder I'd kept hidden in the drawer, a thick stack of printed screenshots, copied texts, time-stamped emails. All the evidence. Everything Claire thought I didn't know. I wasn't hoarding it for revenge. I wasn't planning to shame her publicly or make the kids hate her. But I needed something concrete, something real, to remind me that I wasn't crazy, that I hadn't imagined the cracks, that my heartbreak was earned. I sat in my chair for a long time, staring at the stack. Then I reached for my phone and texted Monica. She confessed. Everything. It's over. She replied almost instantly. I'm here. If you need to talk, I'm here. It should have comforted me, but instead, I felt this deep, strange guilt. Not toward Monica, but toward the idea of moving on. It felt too soon, too clean, like standing on the fresh grave of a decade-long marriage and thinking about someone else's smile. I didn't respond. The next morning, everything imploded again. Claire had started telling people, not just her sister, not just her close friends, everyone. She began reaching out to family members, mutual friends, even her workplace. She called it a full confession, said she wanted to own what she'd done. Maybe she thought it would earn her redemption, or maybe she just realized the only way forward was through fire. Whatever the reason, the effect was immediate. I started getting phone calls. Her best friend, Melissa, screaming at me for giving up. Her aunt, crying and asking if there was still hope. Even my own cousin called, saying maybe I should try to forgive just once. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. What was the point? But then the phone rang again, and this time, it wasn't a friend. It was the affair partner's wife. Hi, she said. I think we need to talk. Her voice was tight, controlled, like she'd been holding back a hurricane. She told me everything, she continued. Said you could confirm it. I didn't hesitate. I opened the folder, took clear photos of the evidence, and sent them over. Minutes later, she called again. This time, she was crying. I knew something was off, she said. I just didn't have proof. I feel like a fool. You're not, I said. You were trusting someone who didn't deserve it. Same as me. We talked for nearly an hour. Not about revenge. Not about what came next. Just two people, gutted by the same wreckage, trying to breathe through the smoke. Before we hung up, she said something that stuck with me. Don't carry her guilt, Adam. Don't let her failures stain your future. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling again. The guilt, the strange weight I couldn't shake, was creeping back in. Not guilt over what Claire had done, but over what I hadn't done. Over the fact that I still felt something when she cried. That I still questioned whether I could have seen it coming sooner. Fixed it. Stopped it. But the truth? There was nothing to fix. Claire had chosen this. Not in a single moment, but in 1,000 quiet decisions. A text here. A secret there. A lie she let slip by. She had destroyed our marriage long before I ever found out. And yet, part of me still hurt. Not for her. Not even for me. For the kids. For the bedtime stories that would now happen in 2 houses instead of 1. For the empty chairs at birthdays. For the way Ryan looked at me with questions he was too afraid to ask. The next morning, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. He looked tired, weathered, but his eyes were sharper, calmer, focused. That man had made his decision. I picked up my phone again and sent Monica a new message. Let's wait a little longer. I need time to close this chapter properly. You deserve all of me, not just what's left after the wreck. She replied minutes later. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. I closed the message and set the phone down. For once, I didn't feel pressure. I didn't feel torn. I felt grounded. I had no idea what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in a long, painful while, I felt like I could breathe without inhaling smoke. And that was a start. The weeks that followed were a blur of paperwork, lawyers, custody agreements, and long, quiet evenings. The kind of quiet that doesn't comfort, it confronts. The kind that makes you stare at old walls and wonder how many secrets they've absorbed over the years. Claire and I went no contact, except for the necessary logistics around the kids. I stuck to it religiously, even when she sent late-night texts like, I had a memory of us today, or do you ever wonder if this could have been different? I didn't reply. She had made her choices. Now she had to live with them, just like I had to live with the aftermath. One evening, Ryan asked if I still loved Mom. I froze. Not because I didn't have the answer, but because I didn't know how to shape it into something that wouldn't break his heart. I love the version of her I married, I finally said. And I'll always care about her because she's your mom. But sometimes people change. And sometimes, loving someone means knowing when it's time to let them go. He nodded slowly, like he understood in that strange, deep way that kids often do, more than they're supposed to. Lily didn't ask anything, but she clung to me more than usual. I started taking her to school every morning, holding her hand a little longer than I used to, making her pancakes in funny shapes, just to see her laugh. The kids became my anchor in the storm, but even with them, the darkness would creep in at night. There were still moments, brief, sharp ones, where I'd catch myself replaying everything, wondering what would have happened if I'd confronted Claire earlier, wondering if she ever really loved me at all. Then came the final court date. The courtroom was sterile, cold. Claire sat across from me, her lawyer whispering in her ear. She looked hollow, thinner than before. Her clothes hung off her like she hadn't bothered checking the size. She didn't meet my eyes until the judge asked if we both agreed the marriage was irretrievably broken. She looked at me then, and for the first time, I didn't feel pain, or rage, or anything close to love. I just felt done. Yes, Your Honor, I said. It was over in less than 15 minutes. 12 years, 2 kids, a shared life, reduced to a few sheets of signed paper and a final nod from a judge. Outside the courthouse, Claire tried to speak to me. Adam, she said softly, almost like my name hurt to say. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I want you to know I'm working on myself. I've been seeing a therapist. I'm going to keep telling the truth to everyone. I just want to be better. For the kids. For me. I nodded. I hope you mean that. She blinked fast. I do. And I know it's selfish to say, but I'll always wish you had stayed. I gave her a sad smile. Then maybe you shouldn't have given me a reason to leave. She looked down, and I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. That night, I sat on my porch alone, a whiskey in my hand, the divorce papers sealed and filed, the weight of it all slowly lifting from my chest. I wasn't free, not yet, not fully, but I was closer. Then my phone buzzed. Monica, thinking of you. Hope you're doing okay. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I opened our old thread, read through a few of the last things we'd said. I thought about the woman who didn't try to fix me, didn't pressure me, didn't demand anything I wasn't ready to give. I typed slowly. Me. Divorce is final. I'd like to see you when you're ready. Her reply came back a few minutes later. Monica, I'm ready if you are. Dinner this weekend. I stared at that screen, feeling something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Anticipation, not dread. Maybe this wasn't the kind of story that ends with a fairy tale. No white horse. No sweeping declarations. Just 2 people, both scarred by life, choosing to meet in the middle of the wreckage. Maybe that was enough. As I sat there in the night air, kids sleeping safely in their beds, the echoes of my old life finally fading into the past, I felt the first real peace settle into my bones. Not because everything was perfect, but because I had survived. And now, finally, I could start living again. Looking back, I realized this story, my story, isn't just about betrayal. It's about rediscovery, about refusing to drown in someone else's mistakes. The biggest lesson I've learned is this: your peace is worth protecting, even if it means walking away from someone you once loved with your whole heart. To anyone listening, especially those of us with years behind us and wisdom earned the hard way, don't ignore the signs. Don't silence your gut to keep the illusion of peace. The real damage isn't always in the act of betrayal, but in the silence that follows, when you choose to stay quiet instead of standing up for your worth. If there's one thing I'd pass on to anyone still fighting for something broken, it's this: you don't have to lose yourself to keep a family together. Sometimes, walking away is the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for the ones watching you, especially your children. In the end, I didn't get revenge. I didn't burn it all down. I simply chose to heal. With grace, with honesty, and with the quiet strength of a man who finally remembered what he deserves.